Utah. Those states are Kentucky, Rhode Island, North Dakota, Texas, New Hampshire, Iowa, Washington, Arkansas, and Maine. And so we also discussed findings from early years and the NCCCR Council and NC Child collaborated to put out a survey in March that was really looking at asking childcare providers, if we were to provide such a program, what would be the impact? They had a 29% response rate, and some of the results from that survey were that 85% of respondents said such a program would help to hire needed staff, and 83% said it would help with retention. Based on the survey results, they estimated that about 7,300 childcare employees in North Carolina working 20 plus hours a week with about 10,500 children under age 6 is the kind of likely universe, but I know they're doing more work to refine that. And importantly, they found that 61% of programs are already offering discounted care to their employees, which represents about a $31 million value in what they're doing, but it also represents lost revenue to those programs because of the discount. We also talked about 2 North Carolina bills introduced this session that touch on this idea. House Bill 800, introduced by Representative Willis, Pare, Campbell, and Loftus, would provide $10 million for a pilot that makes child care teachers automatically eligible for subsidy for kids 8 weeks to 5 years. And Senate Bill 593, sponsored by Senator Chaudhry and Senator Chitlick, would provide $30 million for a broader statewide pilot that covers not only teachers, but also teaching assistants and administrators. And I really appreciate our legislative members that were in the room and acknowledging the very challenging, tight budget situation we are in, but also shared agreement that there's growing recognition that strengthening our childcare workforce is essential to moving forward for our state's economy and for our kids and families. And then finally, we touched a little bit on what a North Carolina model could look like. We talked about lots of different considerations for how you could design the program. If you do something like this, whether you make all staff roles eligible, not just teachers, and that's what we've seen most states have actually done is all staff. Trying to think through the work, how many hours per week need to be met to qualify, whether that's 25, 30 or higher. We talked about the idea of starting a pilot program to demonstrate the impact as opposed to going statewide first. And then folks on the work group brought up the need to, an idea of exploring creative financing to finance this and get it off the ground, whether that's through philanthropic support, tax credits, or revenue generating models. As we've seen, Louisiana has used revenue from cannabis to go towards early childhood education. And then finally, keeping the design simple and not having so many layers of eligibility to help keep administrative costs down. So we will have more work to do to really flesh this out for our December meeting, but it was a really rich and productive discussion, and I'm grateful for the work group members who shared their expertise and thoughts.
I'm Samantha, and I help staff the work group that focuses on helping expand childcare and early education access for public employees in North Carolina. Of course, it's not just relegated to state employees. We have, of course, many federal workers in our state, many folks who are on or near military installations, as well as many local government municipal employees across the state. Raise your hand really quickly if you're part of my work group. Thank you all. Something that I think is special about the first conversation we were able to have on September 8th is that the one recommendation that our work group inherited is about maximizing these strategic partnerships among a lot of education-focused organizations across the state. The UNC system's 17 campuses, the Great 58 community college campuses, plus the system office, as well as K-12 public schools. And we happen to have representatives of each of those institutions who are part of this work group, which I think lends it a lot of fullness and a lot of richness as we're trying to evaluate some of these ideas. Where our conversation really focused was looking at what assets are already available. So we took a really hard look at where all of our 58 community colleges are, what different types of UNC system campus opportunities there are for childcare and early education support if you're a student and or an employee in a lot of those campuses. I was happy to learn have a lot of those existing programs scales focused on their unique campus footprints, not necessarily system-wide. And also different K-12 campuses in different parts of the state have interesting lab school opportunities where there are sometimes on-site childcare services being delivered on high school campuses that double as opportunities for work-based learning for students who might be interested in entering early care and education pathways later on. So we kind of talked about what's already working on the ground, where some of those programs that seem to be really promising are hitting snags, and identified a couple of different opportunities to possibly raid or stretch existing funding or the success of some of those programs. So in the community college system specifically, we really got to hear some great feedback from Dr. Alvera, who kind of explained to us that there are a number of barriers for the community college campuses that aren't offering some form of on-site childcare or early education service right now, that are in the form of cost, concern about insurance or liability, and are there ways to navigate that and make it more possible for some of these institutions or these campuses to leverage other sources of funding or braid them to get to a point where they can support a lab school or something like that, or say yes to this opportunity to deliver some form of on-site childcare or early education or near site. We were talking about different programs like the Career College Promise Pathway, and making sure that we are working in deeper partnership with work-based learning programs and other different types of internship and apprenticeship opportunities and those types of models. And then we also identified a possible opportunity to develop a kind of how-to guide based on campuses both in the community college system and also in K-12 that have done these types of on-site services successfully, to help other campuses learn a little bit more about where to start so that they're not so kind of at sea trying to navigate the process of understanding what the cost would look like, how many people could potentially utilize the benefit, what the return on possible investment looks like, what those steps are to initiate the process. So we were able to identify some tangible next steps to follow up on, and I'm looking forward to us all continuing the conversation.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for these three? All right, sounds like we've learned a lot, but we have a long way to go. So thank you all for your work, and thank you everybody who attended those sessions. I know we're a little ahead of time, but I think we should just keep going if people are good with that. Our next person is Candace Witherspoon, who is going to guide us through a conversation about childcare closures.
Yes.
The emerging closure trends in North Carolina. And is she on?
I hear her,
Yes.
or
Yes,
see her.
just come on.
Angelia, can you hear us? I think you're muted. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, Candace, you come on up. This is going to be about, the unfortunate rise in childcare closures that we're seeing.
Yes.
And the Division for Child Development and Early Education has recently shared that about 50 childcare providers closed their doors in August alone. So Division Director and Task Force Member Candace is going to guide a conversation with 2 childcare providers who are on the brink of making this difficult decision, as well as a working parent who has recently been impacted by a childcare closure in her community. So welcome, Candace, and yes.
Thank you. Is Erin in the room?
Erin.
As
well as
join us up front.
Cassandra and Angelia. Thank you for being here, you all.
You're welcome.
Good morning. And Angelia, I'm just making sure you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time today, and welcome to our panel on rising childcare closures. So across the country, and especially in North Carolina, just as Lieutenant Governor Hunt just stated, families and providers are facing unprecedented challenges. And what we're going to talk about today is what happens, what is the impact when programs close, Not only does it impact a child's healthy development and preparation for elementary school and beyond, but also the family's ability to work and how that impacts the broader community. So today we're bringing together 3 different perspectives. We have 2 providers that are trying to stay open, one that is an owner operator of 2 centers, and one that is a family child care home provider or operator, and a parent's voice of a parent who has just learned that her program is closing at the end of the year. So I'm gonna start off by asking some questions. We're gonna have some conversation and some dialogue, and then at the end, I'll open it up to questions from our task force. And our goal today is to understand the challenges, share the real stories, and explore potential solutions. So I want to start off with a question for all 3 of our panelists. You've heard us say that we're in a childcare crisis. And just in the month of August, we've had more than twice as many programs closed than open. We had 47 closures and only 22 new programs open in the month of August. From your perspective, what is driving centers and homes to close their doors? And Cassandra, I'll start with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cassandra Brooks, and I operate Little Believers Academy. I have a site in Wake and Johnston, so thank you for allowing me to speak with you this morning. I would say I speak to many providers throughout the state, and the biggest thing right now is funding. They are not able to make ends meet, and quote unquote paycheck to paycheck, if you will, having to take out loans, different things, because the money is not equaling up to the amount that you have to pay for your lease, or your mortgage, for your staffing, for supplies. It just does not equal up. And so you have to say, is this worth it? And a lot of them have said that this is not worth it. I know some that are closing at the end of this year, it's just too much. And no one wants to feel like a failure in any business that you start, especially many small businesses. This is like their heart. This is like their baby. And at least that's how I feel. This is like my baby. I started the business in 2012 out of my home, and just continued to go and 5-star my home, and then moved to a center, and then we opened up a second center. So this is truly my baby. However, when you're confined to things outside of your reach, what do you do? And it only leaves people with the choice that they have to close, unfortunately. And many people, they love these children, that they're like another family, they're an extension to their family. But at the end of the day, if you can't operate and you can't pay your staff, then you don't have a viable business.
I'm Erin. I'm from Hatters, North Carolina. Got 3 small children. Yep.
This is about her story. Everybody should have this at your desk.
I've got 3 little boys, a 5-year-old and twin, 2.5-year-old twins. So it's quite wild in my house. But I thank you for having me here today. On this topic, am learning a lot. I have no experience with childcare other than being a mom. I'm also a small business owner, and in the real estate field as well. So I will defer to Cassandra on the lack of funding. Like I said, I'm learning a lot. Our personal story is we have 1 center on our island, and it's closing at the end of the month, and a lot of that is just due to staffing. They can't afford to pay people enough to live and survive where we live. It's expensive, as it is everywhere. But yeah, I will defer to her expertise on that.
Thank you. And Angelia, if you want to introduce yourself and share your perspective.
Yes. Good morning to everyone, the panel and the guest and the provider. I am in Winston-Salem in Forsyth County. I am the owner director of Dialettos Learning Center, LLC. I have been in business for about 13 years. I started my business due to my son getting married and having his first child. As a new grandmother, I didn't want anyone caring for my child but myself. I have 2, as I stated. They both have come through my program. And right now, at this time, I am down to 1 child. That is very, very hard. I have done what the state has required of me. I have gone back to school. I have gained my associates. I have gained my bachelor's, and I am in the process of getting my master's as we speak. Well, the funding is a tremendous problem here in Forsyth County. Stabilization was very good when we had it, but now the stabilization is gone. It has caused a lot of the providers here to close their centers. And I am one of them. I am on the brink or the cusp, as you would say, of making that decision to close my doors. It is a very hard decision to make because my heart is in what I'm doing. I'm very passionate about it. I've had 2 children to leave my facility, go on to school, and become authors at a very early age. So with that being said, I have gave them the knowledge that they needed before leaving me. I prepared them for the next level of education. Funding is so hard. Without funding, we cannot sustain our homes. Our children are going to fall through the cracks, and that's hard. That's very hard. We know that when the children went back to school after COVID, a lot of our children struggled. They are still struggling. And if parents cannot work, they're going to struggle even more. And I will turn it back over to Ms. Witherspoon.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. And I just want to say that Ms. Ship is joining us online because, as she stated, she's a family child care home provider and operator, and she did not want to leave her children stranded, right, to join us in person. So thank you for dedicating your time to us online. And I'm going to let you continue to go and just kind of tell us a little bit about the families and children you serve and what challenges would they experience if you were to close.
Well, I had 2 children. As of last Friday, I lost one. And that was due to her mom making the decision of whether to keep her with me or take her to her grandmother. She was offered the pre-K program, and she was emphatic on keeping her child with me because she said she was getting what she needed in my home. Well, circumstances presented itself, and she had to take her child out. So now that leaves me with one. If I lose the child that I have now, that parent cannot go to work. They're going to be in the same situation that I'm in, struggling to pay my bills. I have a home, I have a mortgage, I have insurance, I have a light bill, I have water bill, I have all the essential things that I need. But in order to stay open, I need those things in order for my doors to stay open, to be in compliance. One child will not sustain my household. Here in Forsyth County, Smart Start and DSS had a wait list for children. I did receive an email on this past Sunday, yesterday, that they're going to lift the wait list for DSS. But I don't know how long it will be before I get any children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cassandra, same question.
Yes, I would say some of the biggest challenges I have, like if I had to close, I'll give you a true story. I just really believe in stories. On Friday, I had a mom come in and she came to my assistant and she just was just like, out of it. My sister was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she said, "Are you okay, Miss W?" for example. And she was like, and I just said, "Whatever it is, God will see you through." And I encouraged her. And before I knew it, this mom was broken down in tears, like a hysterical cry, not able to even control herself. And this was in the office. So we, hugged her and just talked to her and encouraged her. And was like, "Well, what is wrong?" She said, "Well, she's a single mom, hardworking mom. She volunteers at our school. She's amazing. She is a CNA. She said she received her eviction notice and she owes $2,000. She had been trying to make payment arrangements, but they were going to evict her. And so we encouraged her. We told her that we would, put it on our Facebook and ask any of our friends to help her as well and just encourage her. However, I know that if I close, it would probably be the end of that family and they would be homeless. Because if they're already struggling just to make a rent payment, she will not make it. There are many centers, like Ms. Witherspoon said, in our area and throughout the state who have closed. And so this isn't about me. This is about these children and these families having somewhere to go, so parents can go to work, like Ms. Aaron, who has twins, so she can go to work. This is really about them. Yes, I employ teachers. I enjoy what I do, but at the end of the day, if we're not open, those families, they will not survive. And that's just it, period.
And what would happen to your teachers, your staff? If you were to close your doors, what kind of impact would that have on them?
I would say, my staff, I've always encouraged them to get more education. Some of them have a master's degree till they're in school. So I always encourage them, no matter what, get your education, because whether you work for me or you work for anyone, you have your education. So I've always encouraged that from day one. I believe in that. But many of them, they won't make it either. I have another true story, and I mean, it's really, as a provider, it just becomes so many stories that are true. That a teacher, Miss Janelle, she was about to be homeless too. She's a single mom, 4 kids. She didn't have anywhere to go, and I just encouraged her, go to church, you know, keep praying, God is gonna see you through. So her and her friend, they split, the father of her kids, they split, so she was trying to make it work. She only had 10 days to figure this out. And I knew that was gonna be hard, and she lives in Johnston County. To find somewhere to live in 10 days, anywhere to find somewhere to live is hard. And so she met a lady at her church who allowed her to rent a place for $800. And she was like, it's a little shack. And I said, well, it's okay. I said, you have somewhere for your children to live. I said, whether it has a hole in the roof or not, it's okay. You have somewhere for your children to live. So my teachers that are already struggling, they're gonna struggle even more. They're on food stamps, they're on Medicaid, they're on all these things. And I'm just encouraging them to go to school, but I really don't know. I'm so sorry. It's when you go through this every day. So I feel like I'm telling them this dream. Oh, it's like a pipe dream. Go to school, go to school, go to school, you get more money. But we don't have more money to even pay these people. I'm sorry, it's just been a really busy Monday. Just a lot going on, but this is just the true life that I live. And it's not an easy life.
Thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing real life situations and examples. And we can talk afterwards, because I wanna make sure you have any support that you need. Erin, also, as we pointed out, she has wrote this nice, thank you so much, Dan. She has wrote this editorial piece, and it gives the perspective of the parent. As she stated, the only program on her island is closing. And so, Erin, I'd invite you to share, how did you first learn that your program was closing, and what was your initial reaction?
Tears. So I received a letter home on a Friday in my kiddo's backpack saying that Little Sprouts, the childcare facility, would be closing their doors on October 30th. This was mid-July when I received the letter, due to staffing. They were losing all of their staff because they were providing free childcare for those staff members. And then there's their kiddos aged out and entered a pre-K program. And then those parents were then becoming teacher assistants or working for the school district because pay and benefits. And they no longer needed free childcare. So my initial reaction was I was distraught and I was pissed off, to be frank. I was pissed off. My husband and I don't have family around us to be able to help or lean on. It's him and I, and we have 3 kids, a business. I sell real estate. I work full-time in a real estate office as well. And we run our business. And so yeah, I was just pissed off. I don't have any other words other than that. At church, I go to church with one of our county commissioners, and I spoke to her briefly, and I said, I just need you to know that Little Sprouts is closing. It's the only licensed childcare facility on our island. We do not have an option to even be on a wait list. And her immediate reaction was to get a group together, a few county commissioners, our county manager, and school district superintendent, chairman of the board and talk about the issue because as we all know and sit here that it's not just daycare and those parents and families that it affects those kids going into a school district. So, yeah, that's the answer, short answer to that question.
So as a follow-up to that, what are your next steps as a family?
Right now, thankfully, my husband and my business is seasonal, so he is going to take on the role of dad when I can't be there and be a full-time dad while our business is closed. Which we are not stay-at-home parents. We love our children dearly, but we love to work as well. So really, we're faced with, do we move from where we live? It's a place my husband was born and raised. Like I said, we have our business there. We're growing our business. We have a community that we love. And for example, I'm on a few boards within our community just to try to make it a better place to live. We don't want to leave that community. We want it to thrive. We want it to be a place that I'm sure some of you in this room come to visit and love. And you know, the Outer Banks is the Outer Banks. You think of North Carolina, you're either going to Wilmington or you're coming to the Outer Banks. And we want it to be a place that people continue to move and visit. And it's not going to be a place that people can come and visit if there aren't people that can live and work there and have an essential service like childcare. So come April, when our business reopens, we're faced with the choice of, do I quit my job, which frankly pays our mortgage and buys groceries, or do we move, or do we close our business that has sort of become a staple in the community and a place that people can come and gather, or do we move? So right now, I have been working with a few of you in this room and community leaders to try to figure out our next step. To be completely honest, when I went into the initial meeting with leaders in our community, it was childcare is a private issue and we can't do anything to help you, which is complete BS, because there are many opportunities in our community that the county steps up for, and they're not doing that for Hatteras Island currently. So it's very frustrating and I'm just hitting roadblock after roadblock. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to sit in this room with you all and get a broader picture of what is happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. As a parent, I don't feel like it's my responsibility to have to fight this hard to find an essential service such as childcare. You can read my story, but my twins were born prematurely, and having them in a structured childcare facility has been huge, especially for one of my twins that needed a little extra support. And them going into a pre-K program, which there's one on Hatteras Island, and you have to meet certain qualifications in order to get into that program. My 5-year-old did because I had to take a year off when I had my twins. So financially we qualified. This time around, financially we will not. And probably the only reason that the twins would be able to get in would be because they were born prematurely. But I can't even apply for that program until 2027. So what am I supposed to do until then? And those are my options. Quitting my job, closing my business, or moving. And no parent should have to face that. No fault of the childcare facility. Kind of crappy how they presented it all. It just wasn't great, but completely understand from a business aspect, not being able to keep your doors open because you don't have anybody to work there and you can't pay your employees enough to stay.
Thank you for that. I'm going to shift to a question that I heard you kind of mention. I heard you mention about encouraging your teachers to go get more education. And I've heard you speak about quality. What role do you think quality plays? Like, why is quality so important on a child's?
Quality is so important. I have twins as well, so I do understand, especially children that are born premature, they really need to have access to a quality childcare environment, meaning that you have teachers who understand children, they understand their developmental steps, they, have had lots of experience in childcare, being able to also teach parents and work with them. Sometimes this is the parents' first time with the child, so they don't really know what to expect. And so just the quality and education, they go hand in hand. I'm so thankful to be a part of the apprenticeship program where we hire apprentices who can work alongside our mentor teachers who are vested long-term teachers who have education, et cetera, to learn more about childcare and as well as go to school. I'm a mom as well. I have twins and my twins were born early. And so they were, at first, at first, I could not understand all the importance. When you're a mom, you don't see it from that angle, but they needed speech. They needed all these different therapies. And then just getting them in childcare, and I've been able to, see them grow. So it is so important that parents started early. And I encourage all my parents, start them early. Let's do therapy if, you may need, if it's speech therapy, what have you, so that you can give the child a better start.
Thank you for that. Angelia, I'm gonna come to you and I wanna ask you, if you had one form of support, what would make the biggest difference in your ability to remain open?
Funding. The funding is vital in order to keep the doors open. On the state level, I'm gonna say this. I was invited to the Hunt Institute back in May, and I had the opportunity to sit at the table with some of the county commissioners. And they were asking me what I did in my facility, and I'll let them know that I have, by the state rules, I have 5 children that I'm licensed to serve. That's the quota. So I asked one of the gentlemen, had he ever been in a child care facility when it comes to making policies and rules for us to follow? And he looked at me and he said, no. And my response to him was, sir, I don't mean any harm, but before you put pen to paper, why don't some of you and your constituents come to the different daycare centers and see what we do on a daily basis? Because we wear so many hats. I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a social worker. I'm everything to that child need within the course of a day. You're making decisions about me that will affect me without even knowing what you're making a decision about. And to me, that is very unfair. Just like I'm sitting here on my front porch this morning, I cannot make a decision on what y'all are doing because I have no clue. But I am very much aware of what I do every day. And for someone to make a decision about me that is going to affect me in my livelihood is very unfair. Ms. Witherspoon?
Thank you. Cassandra, same question for you. If you had one form of support, what would make the biggest difference in your ability to remain open?
I would say at this time, funding and help for the families. Just different stories I've given. Some families, they can't even get in childcare. They don't have enough money to even afford it. So then they have to go to unlicensed, which also has shown very dangerous. I was just on Facebook this weekend and a child had died in care with 25 children in the home. And, no mom ever wants to have their child pass away at any time in their life, but not let alone where you're trying to make a living for your family and trying to work. And this is all that you can afford. So I would say funding to support the centers and families at this time.
Thank you for that. And Erin, I'm gonna shift the question to you because although your story is unique because you're on an island, right? It's really not unique because so many parents are also in that same situation
Which I'm
where
learning is happening rapidly.
right, even though they're not on the island, it may be that the only program that meets their children's needs in their community has closed and they're facing the same options as you, whether they leave the workforce or they move, right? Because they can't sustain a household on one income, or maybe they're a single parent. So what do you wish policymakers and business leaders understood about the ripple effects on parents when their childcare facilities have closed?
It's my broader picture of this, it's not just the parents. Yes, personally for me, thinking about being home with my wild boys all the time drives me a little mad. I love my children dearly, but like I said, I am a working mom. I thrive in the workforce. But it's the domino effect of how it'll affect communities. It's not just, you know, I send my kid to daycare so that I can go to work. It's how does a community survive economically
Mhm.
if there's no people to go to work? You can't go to work if you have to take care of your kids. I seriously considered bringing my boys here today just to see how much we could get done. Because you will not get anything done. You won't get anything done. It's absolutely impossible. You can't have a community if people can't continue to live and work there. It doesn't work from any level. An essential childcare is an essential service, just as a medical facility is an essential service. I would guess that all of you, maybe not all of you, but the majority of you in this room have at some point needed to utilize some sort of childcare, whether it's grandparents, a licensed facility, a friend to watch your kids so you can take a shower. There's, all sorts of childcare. But the thought of sending my children to an unlicensed facility is absolutely terrifying, especially with my two boys being as wild as they are. They are complete feral children and need someone with a background in childcare that understands what developmental status they're at and need in order to move forward. I just want everybody to imagine like waking up in the morning and not being able to go to work. You don't have the choice because you decided to become a parent. That shouldn't be there's people in my community right now that would like to have more children or are currently expecting their first or second child. And now they're like, what am I supposed to do? That shouldn't be a choice that you have to make as a parent, especially a first-time parent. There's enough craziness going on when you become a first-time parent, but to have childcare be something that is so heavy on your heart that you want to go to work and you want to be a part of your community and economy and moving things forward, but you can't. You just can't. There's no other option. So I would just urge policymakers to understand the absolute domino effect that will take place, especially in rural communities like mine. It's already a hard place to afford to live, but it's going to be especially hard for people to live and work there if there's not childcare.
I'm gonna follow up with one more question, and then I wanna open it up for the task force if they have any questions. And Cassandra, I'll let you go first, okay? And that is, what advice would you give your younger self or someone who is considering opening a childcare facility?
I would say, don't do it. Maybe utilize your resources in a different way, your talents in a different way. I have a daughter, she's a high school senior, and she has talked about it, and I'm trying to push her to a different field because I know sustainable, I don't think long-term, like in the current situation, unless we have a major shift, which can happen, or the current state, no. And I love these children. I love the family. She's come to the center. She enjoys them. She loves them. But love cannot pay your bills. Love cannot, it just does not work out. So I advise people not to. People come to me, oh, can you mentor me? Let me mentor you to probably do something else, because this is not gonna work. And also, as I was, over the weekend, I do wanna just say one more thing. As I thinking about the whole thing, one thing that caught my mind, and I want to share it with you, is to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. For those of us in early childhood, this speaks directly to our mission and to yours as policymakers. Do justice means ensuring that every child, regardless of zip code, has access to quality childcare. To love mercy means honoring and supporting the teachers who pour their hearts and nurturing young minds. And to walk humbly means listening, truly listening to the voices, those serving on the front lines of childcare every day. Our childcare system is the foundation of strong communities. When we invest in it, we invest in the future, in families, and in hope. So you have the ability to help drive hope for our community. You have that ability.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And Angelia, same question for you. What would you tell your younger self or someone who is considering opening a family childcare home?
At this time, I would also say do not do it. It has been very rewarding. It has been very challenging. But in the society that we are in today, it is not very beneficial to stay in childcare because it doesn't equate at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the bills still come. In order for you to stay in your home and thrive, and this has been something that I have been doing, like I said, for 13 years, and to think that I have to give this up to go do something that my heart isn't in, that I may not be gifted to do, just to have income to survive, is hard. And I've got to make a decision by the end of this week of whether I'm going to continue in the field or close my doors. Thank
for
you.
sharing that.
Can I just add something to that?
Absolutely.
As someone that's like navigating how to open up a childcare facility, I 100% agree with these women because it is mind-boggling, the people you have to talk to, the steps you have to go through, the locations you have to find that meet all the requirements, which I absolutely understand. But it is insane. It is a full-time job in itself that myself as a working mom of 3 does not have time for. And I should not have to be doing it. But I am, because who else is going to?
Senator Bergen?
You ready for questions?
I am.
Well, there's a bunch. Has the information from House Bill 412 been communicated to all the child care workers and all the child care as far as the change in training, the change in staffing, the change in all? Does everybody know about that? Because that should have a slight impact, I would hope. But how did you all communicate?
So that's been shared in newsletters and also with their consultants. I think what we're hearing is about the overwhelming trend I've been hearing is about paying their teachers, the ability to pay their teachers and balance their budgets at the end of the month, which there isn't really a direct correlation with 412 and the ability to pay their teachers and stuff.
Aaron, you said you go to a church there. Are there any churches that are willing to step up and open childcare?
The facilities aren't suitable to have a childcare facility. We have toured one, but it cannot meet the requirements in the current state that it's in, and it's too much of a transient space. It's used for a lot of different community activities and groups, so it's not an option. There's currently a pre-K program in one of the churches, but it is they don't meet the criteria to be a full day program, so it's 4 hours a day throughout the school year.
Mom's Day out, kinda.
Kind of, yeah.
What about in the school system? Do they have
They don't
any
have-
space
They don't
anywhere?
have space. No, it's been discussed with the superintendent as well.
And I
Any mobile units they're not using that could be utilized?
There are a few county buildings that have been discussed on my end, that are sitting vacant, and the county is currently not willing to let us utilize those spaces.
And I believe that the provider that is closing is willing to lease out his space to anyone that's interested.
Well, that's a whole other thing, because I'm hearing from this side that he is willing to, but from the county side, he is not willing to. So, which is also a whole thing.
Does he own the space? How many children are going?
It's a 30, they have a license for 30 children currently. I believe they're probably down to about 12 because they stopped allowing children. The last child that they allowed in from their wait list was in the spring of this year, knowing that they were probably going to be closing their doors. And so they also have an after-school program and a summer program, which I'm not sure if that's part of their licensure or not, but huge service as well, because we're such a seasonal community that summer, having a summer program is.
Are there any, I should know, but I mostly go to.
Come on, come
Absolutely,
visit
down there. I've been out there
us.
a few times, but we mostly go to the beaches. YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, any of those activities?
Not on Hatteras Island, no. We have what we call a Pheasant Center, and they do a few summer camps throughout the summer season, but it is an hour or two once a week, maybe twice a week. It's just not an option.
And I'll quit asking, I've got a ton of questions. Are there any licensed in-home childcare centers? Is there a?
Not on Hatteras Island. There are a few unlicensed that are taking in a few children, which our community is so.
Friends, neighbors.
Our community is so small that you can kind of know who's taking in those children, and they're a friend of a friend or they're your friend, but it's just not a sustainable long-term solution. There are a couple in we call it up the beach, Nags Head, Kill Devil Hills, that area, that have in-home licensed facilities, but again, that doesn't help us across the bridge. So. And Dare County, they're rapidly losing those services in that area as well.
Where's Sandy at? He wants to go to the beach too. Sandy?
Come on.
Any other questions? Would you like to go first?
So I mean, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want from the state?
I don't personally know that answer. I'm learning at a very rapid rate. Like I said, my only experience with childcare is taking care of my own children and my niece and nephews. But I know it's a very delicate balance as a business owner, being able to pay your employees a livable wage and keeping your doors open, and being able to charge families a rate that's affordable, but also can keep, your doors open and paying your staff. So I think, like these women said, funding, I don't know what that looks like. I am just simply here to help and offer my services however I'm able. I will talk to anyone and everyone that will listen to me talk about it as a parent and a small business owner, because how am I supposed to hire employees if they don't have a safe place for their children to go? So as far as the state is concerned, I would just say, keep doing all of the great things that you're doing in this room to help us get funding to keep these centers open, because they're closing at a remarkably rapid rate. And it will be devastating, not just for the rural communities, but for our state if people can't go to work and continue to live in North Carolina.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, I just have to agree, you know, what we were saying earlier, funding. I don't know how much funding, you know, people have to look at that from a monetary standpoint and a budget standpoint, but, you know, funding to be able, so the centers can pay the teachers accordingly, you know, provide the childcare, for the families, support for the families. So it's just like in therapeutic support as well that's needed for the children right now, seeing a bigger rise in foster care children. You know, just different families, grandparents are raising their children. Not sure the mom is like on drugs or what have you, but I'm just seeing a bigger rise in grandparents raising the children. So that also puts it, you need a more specialized, experienced teacher who can work with children that have been through trauma, who have been through, you know, various situations that landed them being taken away from their families.
I think with that point as well, education, if there's some sort of way that the community college system or state system can offer stipends or scholarships or however it works, for those teachers to be able to get certifications or degrees, because they are being paid such a minimal wage, to be able to afford those bills to live, and support potentially a family, but then to say, hey, you need this criteria in order to work here, how are they supposed to afford to be able to go and do that? Because as we all know, education isn't cheap.
I have to piggyback on that. I know we have more questions, but it was really a great program. And I've been in childcare for a number of years, and I'm thankful to be able to serve children and families. But it was a grant program called Babies First. And it really it was pretty much between the parents, the teacher, and the facility. And the teachers, they were given like a stipend. When she mentioned stipend, it reminded me, the teachers received a stipend. They were enrolled in school. They had many teachers at that point go on and, you know, further their education because they had something they could look forward to each month. And I want to say maybe $200 stipend or how much ever it was based on their education level when they were going back. And then they also had facilitated just more meetings with the families to learn about developmentally, you know, milestones and where their child was. But that was a really great grant program. And I love that model. And I think it was beneficial to the center. The center received a stipend as well to participate. I know they weren't able to take on every school. Christy may remember a little bit about it, but that, you know, I'm not sure they kept documents and, you know, information on how that program, you know, went and all of that. But from my perspective, I saw a big increase in like the families just understanding. My teachers were so involved and going to school. And I think that was a really great program.
Did you want to ask Angelia's response to that question?
Yes.
Angelia, did you want to share out Senator Chaudhary's question about the magic wand or mention anything? I know you're a teach recipient, so anything to share?
Yes, I am very grateful for the opportunity of Teach. Teach has afforded me to go back to school and receive my bachelor's. And I'm under Teach right now in the master's program for education. Without Teach at this time, I would not be able to be in school. Being back in school was a long life goal for me. I was a single mom at one time when I had my kids. I wanted to be a mother, and I put my schooling on the back burner. Now I have that opportunity, and I'm very grateful for it. There need to be more programs out there to help, because a lot of us want to be educated in order to nurture and care for our children. I'm just as qualified as a school teacher in a brick and mortar building as a early childhood educator in my home. We don't have benefits. There is no retirement. There are no credit unions for us. It's like it's one-sided. Our children are our future. Development starts at the very early ages. And without childcare, our children are going to fail. Is there anything that the state can do to come to a common consensus and revive childcare? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ms. Cassandra and Angelia and Aaron for being on the panel because it's this lived experience that we all need to hear about. I just wanted to share that they're not outliers. This is pretty common. And it's really unfortunate to hear your story. And let me share with, and I know Ms. Cassandra a little bit. She is a person you would want your teachers to work under and your children to be at their school. So the thought of her closing her doors would be a detriment to the community. So with that being said, I'm hoping that we can hear this. I can't remember if it was Ms. Angelia or Ms. Aaron that said that, Ms. Aaron said that sometimes we're talking to policymakers, they said it sounds like it's a private issue. It's not, because it's the individuals that you think have a private issue are going to work in the public community. And they can't work in those public community and create dollars for our community
Well,
if
it's
they
also,
don't have someplace to leave their children.
also the school system. What
It's
do
the school
what do your
system.
numbers look like? Your testing
Exactly.
scores if these children aren't
Exactly.
getting structured.
And not to mention the fact that I think about everything, we're not talking about just watching children during the day. So when you talk about what's needed, funded, nobody's asking for a handout. I think sometimes our policymakers are like, oh, they're looking for money. No, they're looking for money to meet the needs of programs, to meet the needs. Some of that money is needed for mental health supports. There should be money allotted to say that at every school, if you need someone, there's someone that can rotate and come in half a day, because teachers aren't even equipped to deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with. And it's making them leave the workforce even faster because it's hard to be equipped for that. And I also heard Ms. Cassandra say real quick, she said that as much as we love getting our teachers educated, and Dan and I were just saying, teach, yeah, we came through teach and all of that, but our ceiling is still here with what we can pay for teach, okay? So if I'm a teacher and I am going to get my free education through this amazing program Teach, I'm taking it to the school district. So until we reach parity, we still have an issue. So then we're still back at the same place. And I heard you say, because you care about your workforce, you're like, I really kind of feel like I'm selling them pipe dreams. You know, so you want to say, improve yourself, but they're like, I like the idea of improving myself, but I can go to Target and make that same money and I don't have to go to school.
And get benefits.
And get better benefits in doing that. So that's what.
And no burnout. That's what I keep hearing over and over.
So that's what we really have to contend with, that Ms. Cassandra and these other people that have lost their programs, they're not looking for a handout. They're looking for a way to meet the needs of families. So these are people that care about the needs of families, and we can't afford to turn our heads to these needs any longer. And because if not, we're gonna be in a crisis much greater than we can imagine. To hear that this young lady is thinking about, I'm gonna have to close my business, well, that's an impact on her community. I'm gonna have to stay at home with my children, where the children need to be in an organized program where they can learn
not
those social.
equipped.
Right, and no, you're not, and it's okay, right, and it's okay. So again, but thank you, you need to take, that story needs to be shared, because a lot of people can resonate with who you are, the way you look. Okay, and it might settle with them more when you're sharing it with small business owners, that I can't run my small business if I don't have somebody to take care of my boys. I can't provide that service for the community if I don't have somebody to take care
Well,
of my boys.
I also think about the other moms that are having to, my county told me to write a business plan, to put together a budget, to do I'm starting a brand new business. I don't want to start another business. I've been through that. I don't want to do it. And I especially don't want to do a childcare business. How many other moms are being told, you need to do this work before we will even consider helping you? That's not okay. That is not okay.
So thank you for sharing that story with them. Thank you, Candace, for having these varied lenses up here to have this conversation. This is what we really need to focus on. It's not a handout. It's an opportunity to figure out how we meet the needs and say we won't leave the table until we figure it out. And it's not an overnight solution, but it has to happen. The very core. And with everything that we see happening in the world now, the one thing that we need is people like Cassandra and Miss Angelia, who care to help develop good people in this world. And that's what they're doing from the ground level. So thank you.
And thank you for clarifying the, like a free handout, right? Because when you're talking about funding, I've heard you say you're talking about subsidy, right? Your parent that you just said may be homeless. Are you charging her the difference between what subsidy pays and your tuition?
No, I'm not.
So then she's taking a loss just for supporting her.
Exactly, and that is more common than the opposite, because we know our parents can't
They
afford
can't
it.
afford it. Cannot afford it. Cannot, I mean, they're trying to just have groceries. They're just trying to have gas to get, I get calls every day. I'm trying to come, but I don't have gas. Like, they don't have gas. Like, we take gas and drive in our car like normal. No, they don't have gas. One lady, her car got repossessed. She's like, I'm gonna try to catch an Uber to drop her child off. Like, they're catching Ubers to drop their children off. This is like normal life for them. Until we can really understand and figure out ways to help the whole family and help the school, we can still keep spinning our wheels. But I'm thankful to the governor for this task force and for each of you and your willingness to come together and put your minds, because it's gonna take a lot of people. And I have to agree, I think someone was mentioning earlier, they went to different workshops. Different workshops I've been in, they've always said, well, you can go to other industries and apply it to your industry, then we're pushing ground. But if we're just in our same little circle, you will not be able to see outside of your lens. So definitely go out, look at other fields, look at other industries, see what they're doing, and see how we can maybe bring this back and help our field be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit smoother, cost effective. And I do have to agree with, that is true. We're not asking for a handout. We're just trying to make ends meet just so that we can pay the staff, and like I said earlier, you can't have a viable business if you can't pay your staff. You just have to close,
And I would like to learn more, and so you went to Christy about that Babies First, because in my experience, just kind of see what other models are out there. It's more the short-term gain that benefits, because teachers are trying to figure out how to get to work every day. So to say that there's a stipend here, sometimes that goes a long way to say, if you work for 2 years to get a degree, then you'll get a pay increase. That's good. I'm not negating that. But it's those sort of little short-term gains that help, because I can't tell you how many teachers I have. Like, I have teachers that take care of children like they birthed them, that are in transitional housing. And we had to go to weekly payroll just so they can afford an Uber to get to work and have a smile on their face for children that don't even look like theirs every day to care about. So I don't want us to think that that's what we should be doing. That's what we're doing as our contribution to the world. So I believe that our community, we owe it back to them. They just want a roof over their head, they want transportation to get to work, and know that they can have their lights on.
That's right.
That's it. And to be able to feed their own children. That's it. Healthcare, that's it. That's it.
And for everyone, Babies First NC was a pilot program that was funded through the Preschool Development Grant. And Early Years is the group that managed that work. It was really great program, but it wasn't just stipends. They also had intensive technical assistance, a focus on family engagement, and it was also a focus on the child's development and getting them developmental screenings and things like that. But
That's
I know
amazing.
that she would have that, the division would have that information. And then after that, we did a feasibility study on what that would look like as creating a program as such statewide. So that was done by Child Trends. And that was just a couple of years ago. But it was a hard time during the middle of COVID trying to uplift these programs. But I know the reports, sorry, because I used to work at the division side, and I was over those. I know I can speak a lot about it, but I know with the early years part, with the Babies First NC, Christy's team can give a lot about that, and then with the feasibility study, the division should have all of that.
Thank you for sharing
With
that.
a whole template on how to do this.
Those are the
across
things we
the
need to
state.
be looking at. What worked, what had impact?
I just wanted to jump in and add, first, thank you all for being here. Erin, when we connected, I was really excited to have an opportunity to help, with your story, but also the fact we hear from folks all over the state constantly. There are parents, grandparents all over the state living exactly what Erin described today. And, when Cassandra and Angelia talk about, being the gear that helps people keep it going, when your childcare breaks, you can't afford housing, you can't afford transportation, you can't afford food. Like, it is the linchpin that holds it together for so many families. And it is a source of tremendous fear and anxiety every single day for folks that I hear from. And especially when we're in a place, I know on the the prenatal to 3 roadmap that Amy talked about earlier, paid leave is on there. The ability to be with your baby during those first 6 weeks, when as a state, we don't have infant slots, right? And for so many people at this really critical time, folks are moving into poverty, they're losing their labor force attachment. And we're seeing nationwide, the Bureau of Labor Statistics just came out recently saying that nationwide, women are leaving the workforce in unprecedented numbers. And it's because of lack of access to affordable, high-quality childcare, lack of access to leave to be there when their kids need them, the end of so much flexible work that allowed people to find a way to juggle it all. And so, like, as you said, the ripple effects, and it's, it's just not one person, it's not just one problem, it's statewide that we're hearing about it. And even for the people not experiencing it, the everyday fear that it could be me next is something that folks with young children live with every single day. So thank you all for sharing that.
North Carolina is just going to be left behind if they don't figure something out, because the domino effect is going to be catastrophic for the state if we can't find a solution to the childcare issue. Because like Beth said, moms are a powerhouse to be reckoned with. And if we cannot be in the workforce, then sorry men, but y'all are in trouble. Sorry.
Amy?
I was just gonna say first, thank you, and that we do have solutions here. And it's not actually that much money. When I get in with my big chip on my shoulder about early childhood with folks in transportation, and they talk about the $400 million per whatever miles it is. And I think, 400 million? We're asking for what, Christy, to fund statewide wages. If every Smart Start could offer wages.
50 million.
50 million,
53
50
million,
million. It's not the, we know there's not one single silver bullet, but we do have incredible models that work. We just fund them at a fraction of, children who could be eligible at 4%. Oh, this program works great. Get to 16% of eligible folks who can access it. What? We have solutions, and we have to come up with that political will, I think, to fund it. So huge thanks, because you are all incredibly eloquent, and I appreciate that. And I know the Smart Start is working with you. I've connected with Sarah Sampson, and please lean on us. I appreciated your good questions, Senator Bergen, so that we can be better advocates in Raleigh for you all at the local level.
How can we as childcare business owners or parents, or even small business owners, help you all move forward in figuring out what the solution is?
It's a great question. Would anybody like to share any thoughts?
Well, excuse me, I would say we have got to take seriously that childcare is an essential service, like one of you said. And we need every business and every person in county commission, the legislature, every branch of government to understand that, and that moms and dads are not gonna be able to go to work. And then we are not gonna be the #1 place for business in the country. People really care about that ranking, let me tell you, because we brag about it. And it's gonna stop, it's gonna go away unless we fix this. And so many other states have found a way, red and blue states. So we should be able to find a way too.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Especially because we used to be #1.
I know we did.
Yeah, Governor Hunt, I think it'll help if she brings the boys next time.
I'll bring them wherever. They love a road trip.
I love a road trip. Thank you all so much. We're gonna take up 30 minutes for lunch. Thank you.
Bring their voice to the legislature.
That's what we let them, that
States that y'all have already talked to.
for a session.
Thank you both. Oh my gosh, y'all.
It does take them a second, yeah.
The ones who aiming to.
Just take new models.
New models.
I know.
You got it. We've got so many things to work. I know, I agree.
Arizona, Iowa.
And she would be able to get here.
Those are ones that we know have.
remember. I've seen it.
Yeah.
We've got it. We just
Is it provided or is it like on our own?
I let the task force.
I'm about to lose it when I can't say anything.
I find stuff in my bag. Oh, I usually have like several of these on the
No, yeah,
Senator, how are you?
How are you doing, Senator?
Good to see you. You all right?
Personally,
I'm Christy.
it's not just
A month ago.
but statewide, it's all, yes.
You gotta get spokesman.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we were.
I missed you.
I
They're interested in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait to see it.
I think you need to be on a couple of meetings ago, right?
She sits upstairs and I think she always makes sure your ears are not
I understand y'all know each other.
We work hard.
Nice to see you.
Hey, I'm Leanna Martin.
NC Child.
Me too.
Frank Hill.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish we had
The face, the name.
How we can make rectory of some.
Good to see you. Always great to see you. And everything you do for us.
I don't know, we are, but
It's hard for you, I'm good. I'm waiting for everyone to grab their lunch before I grab it.
Last time we had universal childcare.
I'm doing the same thing.
I'm like, I'm gonna grab it, but I'm waiting for everyone else to grab it. I was like, yeah.
You're in Wake County.
Our friends, I have a feeling it would be like more. And then I remember when I was looking, like, how do I add my twist to that? Paying for 3 and just paying for 4. I'm like, alright, more than my entire paycheck. So, I mean, I shifted for a while and it worked out fine, but not everyone can do that. That's a privilege that I have,
The county commissioners.
somebody please say.
I'm so proud of you.
I was good.
Such a good job.
Until I was asked.
Yeah,
And then you were ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
That was a great.
It was great.
It's a friend, take that for a while. Okay. That's been one for Friday.
We're gonna have to do it by county.
That was fun. I can have it, I can have.
So just push the button.
I can, but I can maybe have somebody else.
I need this list.
Alright, so it doesn't have to change the house, like my
I
job.
think we can. The general assembly.
Like, you don't have,
Right. Right. It's like much more.
You went to a couple houses.
Need me to call you to make your day. I still have the same question.
It's this one had like
I'm Christy.
yeah.
Come on, I'll put a bunk room in the twins room and everybody can
I really think we should run the twins.
my husband.
Take them to the legislature. Aaron and I will have multiple conversations.
You can look at calendars.
Yeah.
My husband and I talk
Yeah,
about
let's do
it.
that.
Hey, every time I come to Raleigh, I would always brag my kids. I'm like, we're going to the legislature, and then the dinosaur museum.
And thank you for connecting us.
Right.
We gotta get
I don't have the answer.
We're gonna fix it.
I went to get cookies this morning and saw the dino.
Oh, well, we're working with,
My kids are in the legislature right now.
I was in a city.
Well, I just-
Did you ever talk to Ashley about leadership?
Sounded like they're on So how would that help
Don't believe anything you just said. You're not going
I was at CHHS for almost 7 years. I started COVID response.
At lunch, like if I don't have it at lunch. They turn 6.
Right, which is.
Childcare, particularly as women were entering into the military, it was often informal, it was pretty underfunded, and it was pretty inconsistent across the board. And what happened was, and this also happened in states where you saw some really significant health and safety things happen that got a lot of national attention. And so the military started to say, oh, we need to take childcare more seriously as a matter of mission readiness, as a force multiplier. And we need to think not just about that there's a place for kids to go every day while their families are on the job, protecting our country, but it also has to be a safe place, a quality place, so that parents are focused and on the job doing the important work that they do every day. And so in 1989, there was this really landmark legislation called the Military Child Care Act, and it was really in response to the changing demographics, but also some of the scandals, frankly, that had happened in military child care. And in essence, it laid the groundwork for really creating a military child care system that addressed quality, affordability, and availability for military families. So in the 1990s, what you saw was, and just like we saw with some employers in the civilian world, a lot of interest in on-installation childcare. So really building up on-installation childcare, trying to look at how many families were going to need childcare, and really doing a lot to build out high-quality childcare on installation. And that was both family childcare homes and childcare centers. And they really developed an incredible system that in the 1990s was known as a model for the nation, and became known that way as a model for the nation because they did a couple things. One is they made sure that all of their on installation child development centers and homes achieved national accreditation standards. And they also created a training and competency-based assessment for the workforce. Some of you may have heard of the Child Development Associate credential, but it was really moving the entire workforce towards a level of competency in working with young children. And so they started there. And I think would have stayed there except for the need kept growing, and the ability to create on-installation childcare became a little bit limited. It's quite expensive. Not everybody lives immediately near an installation. And then what happened was we saw a lot of deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and during that time, a lot of deployed Guard and Reserve. And Child Care Aware of America at the time launched a voluntary effort to try to help deployed Guard and Reserve families find childcare off post, off installation. And that was really the beginning of really thinking about outside the gates, if you will, for military families, that we were going to need to have a broader system. And so that is also when you started to see, and now I'm getting into military childcare in your neighborhood, there be the opportunity for military families to use community-based childcare, particularly if there was no childcare slot available on installation. And so that became military childcare in your neighborhood. At the time, the requirement was still that childcare be nationally accredited. And so that was in the early 2000s. And then in 2019, as the need continued to grow for off installation childcare, I think the military quickly came to realize that using national accreditation as the only standard was going to be insufficient to meet the need. And frankly, if you are the military and you have people everywhere, you're going to want to start with something national, right? You've got national accreditation standards, it's the easiest. But they realized, okay, we're going to have to start looking state by state. We still want to make sure that the childcare that military families are getting is quality, it's healthy, it's safe. How are we going to start doing a comparison state by state of state quality rating and improvement systems like our star rating system? So, thus we have military childcare in your neighborhood, which was nationally accredited care, and military childcare in your neighborhood plus, which is now state quality rating and improvement system approved by DoD Care. So There's some things that are similar about fee assistance in the military to state childcare subsidy programs and some things that are different. And I want to try to talk a little bit about them because they're important things when we think about our system that we might want to consider. So first of all, it's primarily active duty right now. It's not Guard and Reserve, but active duty families in all 4 of the branches and the Space Force. And what I do want to say about that is just like we have 100 counties in North Carolina, let me assure you that all the service branches do not operate the same. And they all have, sometimes they have their own requirements. And so as we're administering fee assistance, for example, Child Care Aware of America does not administer it for the Navy. They do it in a different way. So it's important to understand that even here in North Carolina, you may see slightly different requirements depending on the service branch. They are trying, I will say, at the Office of the Secretary of Defense to align all those because they think it makes it really hard for military families, but they are different right now. In 2024, we served about 24,000 military families. Again, they call it fee assistance. It is a child care subsidy. It is similar to states' subsidy systems in that the parents do still pay a portion and the military pays a portion. The things that are different, I'll talk about in just a minute, but right now I will say we have about 300 providers actively serving military families in North Carolina through this program. That is 300 out of about over 4,000 that technically are eligible to serve military families because it's 3, 4, and 5-star rated programs in the state of North Carolina is what the Department of Defense has approved. So we have a lot of programs that could serve military families. Some of it really is geographically dependent. And I'm going to talk about some of the barriers to enrollment in just a minute. But keeping with families right now, all families, regardless of service branch, go through a system called militarychildcare.com. It is not a system that is run by Child Care Aware of America. I do want to say that. It is not the easiest system to use, but it is the system that they are all using. So I do want you to know that, militarychildcare.com. And part of the reason is they're trying to manage whether or not they have a place on installation that the family could go before they're going to approve them to go off installation. They're changing that now, but that is how it has been. So that's what a family does. And then the providers are paid by Child Care Aware of America on behalf of the Department of Defense or the service branch. And families are also paying a share of that tuition. To give you a sense of how different it is and how different the rates are, in the military, the maximum rate that they will pay, and this includes what the family will pay, is $2,000 a month for any age of child, $2,000 a month. That's actually significantly higher than most state childcare subsidy systems. I mean, a lot higher. So if, regardless of the age of the child, what's going to happen is that the family's gonna get assessed based on their income, and they're going to be told how much they need to pay. And then between their fee and the military, they will pay up to $2,000, not to exceed $2,000. So if the provider's charging $1,500, they're gonna get $1,500. If they're charging $2,000, they'll get $2,000. If they're charging $2,500, they will get $2,500, but that means that the military family will have to make up the difference in that extra $500. So is that clear to everybody? That is how they're fee. So it's not, there aren't different rates for every single county. There aren't different rates for every single age. It's just 2,000. That's their cap.
Susan, in that example,
Sir.
you used 2,500, said they would pay the 500, but they assess the family on the front end. So if it's 1,500 that the child care provider charges, the family still has to pay something of any amount, right?
That's correct. So I'm gonna make it really round numbers just to make it easy. So say the provider's charging $1,500. And this family needs to pay based on their calculation of how much, and the family income goes way, way higher than state subsidy, way, way higher. So they say this family needs to pay 500 of the 1,500. So the military is gonna pay 1,000, the family's gonna pay 500. Okay. Okay, so how does it work for providers? So again, as I mentioned, you do have to be regulated, you have to be licensed or regulated in your state, and you have to either meet national accreditation or certain state QRS standards. That really varies state to state. Again, in North Carolina, it's 3, 4, and 5-star rated programs. Enrollment and ongoing participation though, and this is where it becomes somewhat of a burden for providers, I'm not gonna lie. If you're a provider and you're participating in state childcare subsidy system, you got one whole set of application and paperwork that you gotta fill out, and you're getting payment from the state. Then you're getting payment from families. If you just choose to participate in military, you also have to fill out a separate set of paperwork, and you have to send in your attendance separately for this program. So they are not linked together. State subsidy systems and the military fee assistance program are not linked together in any way. Again, where providers benefit is that the rates are considerably higher. So once they're in the door, they usually like it and stay in the door. I mentioned the variation across branches can cause confusion. The rates are not different across branches, but some of the eligibility criteria can be different, so it can be a little bit confusing. Anybody have any questions about this?
Was that
Go ahead.
was that $2,000 cap per child or per family?
Per child.
Okay, and then just to give you a sense of where folks are participating now, typically, you know, we will see, particularly if they're active duty, they're living near installations. So you can see where we have the largest. Always the Army is going to have the largest number of families participating. So you see a lot around Fayetteville, and you can see where they're participating right now. So they are scattered around, but particularly they're going to be around military installations. Okay, and that is really my setup. I'm happy to answer any question, except for to say, I just really want to say that the military childcare system still remains a model for the nation. It really is incredibly well resourced. It is not simple resourcing, because I will say funding for the military childcare system doesn't just come from the Department of Defense. It has to come from each of the individual service branches and from the installations up. So it is not a simple funding system, but they collectively are committed to making it work for military families because they know it's mission critical. And in fact, as recently as this government shutdown, you will see that the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense has included this in essential services. Childcare is essential services because folks still need to be on the job protecting our country and doing the things they do for the Department of Defense. And then I will just say, if anybody has questions, you know, for providers, if it's a family, I would send them to militarychildcare.com. If any providers have any questions about participating, they can absolutely contact us at this number or at this website that you absolutely cannot read. But it does say provider services at usa.childcareaware.org. And that's it for me. Any questions from anyone?
So you said in terms of they have to go through militarychildcare.org first to see if there's something on .com on base. So parent choice in terms of your provider starts only if there's nothing available for you on base. Is that correct?
Not really, because they have actually changed, they've been changing that over time, and that is also service branch dependent. So militarychildcare.com is the place to start, because the first thing the family has to do is determine whether or not they're eligible. And then they may be directed towards on installation care if it's available. In other cases, they started to really open that up and say, wherever you need care, whatever's best for your family.
So what would you say is a takeaway for us as a task force based on the childcare experience? Like when I watch this presentation, I almost think like should we think about childcare that's sector specific? I mean, that's a controversial idea, but what's the takeaway?
Oh, that's interesting. So probably I wouldn't go there to set, you know, I get why the military went there. I think there's some big takeaways for me. One is that I think in America, we're always gonna have the sense that there is a family share and a either business share and or public share. We're not at a place where America sees childcare as just free for all, right, in general, although we could talk about New Mexico separately. But I think in general, even the military is structured in that way. I would say the other thing that's really important to know that I haven't said yet is that the military views financing childcare both from a demand side and a supply side investment. And I think that's critical in that it's demand side, a portable subsidy for the family. The family has choice now. And even on installation, they have a network of family childcare providers that they have access to and CDCs. So family choice is the demand side, that families need help offsetting the cost of care. But supply side, they are also investing. So think about it. They're investing in facilities, they're investing in the workforce, they're investing in quality improvement initiatives, that it is a both and, that if you're not gonna get to the kind of supply you need just by doing portable subsidies, I'd say. Those would be a couple lessons learned. Yes, ma'am.
So I also just want to provide some additional context that this isn't one of the most incredible programs, this military childcare in your neighborhood program, but it is, like in North Carolina, part of a bigger ecosystem. And that ecosystem, which includes on-installation care and family home providers, is also under enormous strain. So they are dealing with the same staffing issues that you are, and they're competing with the private sector, and sometimes within joint bases, competing across services for staff. And now those staff are not gonna be paid, and because there is a hiring freeze, they cannot backfill positions right now as people are leaving. So there's just a national crisis right now, and this is such an incredible program, but it doesn't mean that there aren't supports that need to be filled in from the community level, and anything we can do to increase that 300 number closer to 4,000 would be incredible.
Yes, and in fact, the military is asking us to do some additional provider recruitment work across states, so stay tuned.
Susan, could you
Yes, sir.
get us is there a chart that shows the subsidy based on their pay or whatever? Can we get a copy of that?
I will find out, you know, I need to find out what they will allow us to share. So
Just to compare.
yeah, the way they calculate how much the family should pay has to do with how much they would pay if they were on installation.
That's where I was going.
Yes,
Part of Fort Bragg's in my district, and
yes,
we have a lot of people don't wanna live on base anymore, and so a lot of them live in Harnett County.
correct.
And we interact with them, a lot of them go to church with me, and so I'd love to see, because I know there's other factors that they figure in there. And then
Yes,
you brought up New Mexico, let me remind you, New Mexico, over 50% of the folks are on Medicaid in New Mexico.
yes.
So it's a
And
different-
in fact, New Mexico is not going to universal access. That's been the headline, but it isn't actually universal. But anyway, it's great, it's still great. Yes, I will see if I can get you how they do the calculation on what family should, I'll have to find out if we're allowed to share that, and if so, I will be happy to. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any data or what do we know about the impact of not military serving home-based childcare in the areas that are heavily frequented? Does that make sense? Like, how does this impact the childcare system broadly in Cumberland County or Onslow County? And I know we have a panel, but.
So are you thinking about like what percent of the market are military families buying?
I'm thinking that if the military is able to pay up to $2,000, that is a lot more than we are paying as a state and than most private families can pay. And so I think it's great. I wish we were all at that bar and we're not. So I'm just wondering what impact that has for families,
you know, in those communities as far as just like a competition perspective, really?
That's a really interesting question. It's interesting because the military, as Jenny said, is really under a lot of strain themselves, and they're trying to think of how do they buy more slot, like how do they move their military families up on the list, right? And so in some cases, they're actually partnering with like WISE to build new facilities, like in San Diego, they're doing that. In other cases, they're buying slots. Now, what the community will argue is if you're buying slots for military families, you're taking those slots away from civilian families. But that is the environment that we're in because military families have to be on the job. And so I think we're looking at other ways. They're still looking at other ways because just because there's $2,000 available to them, if there's no slots, that's only going to get them so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Great. Next, we're going to hear from North Carolina leaders delivering great services and support to military families in our state. I'd like to welcome Jenny Aiken, Vice President of Strategic Alliances and the White Oak Collaborative at Blue Star Families, and our task member, up to guide this discussion. Jenny, you want to bring up your guests and introduce them?
Yes, please.
Great.
Let me get myself set up here. This is the millennial in me as I use tech instead of paper sometimes. All right. Thank you all for joining me. I joined last task force to represent military families and make sure our voices were heard. And as you heard just now, we also from the military community have a lot to bring. So I just want to commend all of you for making sure that we are heard. And we have such an incredible panel who will help dive into much of the work that's already being done, some places we can improve, and that sort of thing. Rod, you're going to make the case here for a sec for why military families in North Carolina matter, but I want to give a little bit of context. We've heard, yes, subsidies are high. That's great. Military families move every 2 to 3 years. So when you're looking at wait lists coming in, you don't always get in. So there are lots of reasons to try and move military families up on the list. We also come into communities where we don't have families. You know, we may have grown up in North Carolina like I did. My family lives in Lincoln County. I was at Fort Bragg. Grandparent help doesn't necessarily help 3 hours away. So there are just some additional limitations in the social infrastructure for families that they do need additional support. They do need kind of a leg up in getting access to care. I also want to note that military spouses are one of the most unemployed demographics in the country, and that issue is inextricably linked with childcare. Military spouses have been unemployed at a rate of 20% or higher ever since we started measuring. And in a climate where you need 2 incomes to survive, again, you really do need to add this component. And military families are dealing with all of the same childcare constraints that everybody in this room on this task force has talked about for years, and they're doing it also where there are national security implications, where service members can be kicked out of service if they do not have a family childcare plan. So you're talking about single soldiers, sorry, Army bias here, single service members. You're talking about dual career military. You're talking about spouses who may have a service member deployed. They still need to work to bring in income because, by the way, 1 in 4 enlisted families are food insecure. You know, there are all of these constraints. So really, this is a national security issue. And North Carolina is one of the top 5 military populous states in the country. So it is really important that we do this. And our defense community brings in case you need it, billions of dollars in defense spending into the state. So it is an economic imperative as well. So thank you. It's my long-winded way of saying thank you for having this conversation. And I'm very, very excited to introduce our panel here today. So I've got Rod White from the he's a Military and Family Services Coordinator at the North Carolina Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. I've got Dawn Rochelle down there. She's CEO of One Place. I've got Stacy Davis of Youth and Family Services Coordinator at New River YMCA, and Sarah Williams, who's joining us online. Do we have Sarah? Yes. Hear us, by the way, but she can't come off mute. So I'll, okay, flag you down if she has a comment. We're gonna figure that one out. Maybe we've got some chat situation going on. Okay, great. Sarah's compliance coordinator at the Camp Lejeune, or Lejeune, depending on where you're from, MCAS New River. So on that note, Rod, I'm gonna open with you. Could you please, you represent North Carolina's lead agency on military and veterans affairs. Can you give us some background on North Carolina's military community, a rough picture of how many military families we have in the state?
Yes, we have 5 major installations. We have National Guard as well as Reserve that reside in North Carolina. We have approximately 250 to 300,000 family members. We have approximately 91,000 active duty soldiers. We have approximately 10 to 11,000 National Guardsmen and 51,000 reservists that are being serviced here in North Carolina. So with those numbers being thrown out, with the challenges of childcare already, that's a burden on the host communities that host our military installations and our service members who call North Carolina home. I did hear just before that we talked about a little bit about MCCYN Plus, or Military Child Care in Your Neighborhood Plus program. And we talked about a little bit about competition as far as the private and that program is concerned. I will tell you that there's a good program, it's a great program, but there are drawbacks when it comes to trying to get providers to sign up for the actual program. I did have a conversation with the department up in Washington on last week with Secretary Millett, and they did say in 2026 they would bring updates, because right now each service does do their own thing. So the Army has a way of doing it, so does the Marines, and so on and so forth. So there's no comparison. Everybody does it different. There are certain things that are done and it's annotated. So when I say that, we still have to fill it out manually. Our child care facilities have to fill out the paperwork manually each month to send to DOD to get reimbursed for the child being in the program. I'm not here to talk down the program. What I am saying is I'm thankful that we're going to improve it and continue to improve it to make it better user friendly for our child care, for our service members who are in the state of North Carolina. I will also say that it's a challenge as far as it's a readiness challenge for our military. I'm a crusty old sergeant major of 31 years, and I spent the majority of my life taking care of soldiers and their family members. And one thing that is universal across the military is, if I can make sure that that soldier's family is taken care of, he will be mission focused when we take him down range. So child care is a quality of life issue. One of the things that I've ran into in my travels in North Carolina is trying to get people to understand that quality child care is light years different than babysitting. Quality child care means that I'm gonna get Sammy and Joey and Susie able to count 1, 2, 3, ABC, know their colors, know where they live, and their address and phone number when they get into pre-K and child care and kindergarten, right? If not, the statistics say if a kid is not reading on grade level at 3rd grade, the potential of that child being successful drops dramatically. So childcare is just not something that we're just saying it's a crisis. I remember sitting with Miss Perry and with Miss Ford when they was doing here in North Carolina, when you had the task force before, and we was gonna fall off the child care cliff. And then we found a magical way to stretch the money out just a little bit longer, and we stayed on just a little bit. And we kept raising up and down and saying, yo, in the military community, we really need this, because it is a recruitment problem as well, retention. There are a lot of people leaving because I don't have childcare. We're dual family military, so one of us have to go. So then we wonder why we have recruitment problems. So it boils back to family first. Family first mission always. Right? So we have to make sure that we're getting at the childcare issue, because in North Carolina, we want to be the most military friendly state. And this is one of the ways that we can be at the top if we address this issue, because it takes it off the plate of those soldiers and those war fighters when they go down.
As a former spouse, to hear a former sergeant major speaking like this is just huge. I mean, military families look to leadership now, and this is the mentality in the military. This is not a one-off. This is the view of the military, is that childcare is an essential need for our families. Dawn, as one local organization that shares a community with military installations in our state, One Place plays a special role in understanding and meeting the needs of our military families. So thank you so much for the work you do. Can you tell us about some of your observations on childcare needs experienced by members of the military and their families?
I can. Thank you for having us. It is also really important because if people say One Place, we are the original Smart Start entity for Onslow County, and we're established on the foundation of Smart Start funding, which, as I sat over there and listened, Smart Start was designed to meet a supply and demand issue. And I don't say that because of the people in the room, but as I've sat there and listened, I'm born and raised in Eastern North Carolina. I am a professional social worker, so I come at this as this is a child protection issue. This is also a force readiness issue. And what was important to me post 9/11 is that our community, as all communities were, but you feel it. You feel it even today. I'm very aware of what goes on the news because my staff are going to come in differently because the Marine Corps is going to be the first in. Or they're already off the coast on a boat ready to go in, or what's happening in South America. And that's just the reality. After 9/11, what we began to notice with our emergency responders is that we couldn't respond after Hurricane Isabel. We haven't really been able to respond in the same way since, because our kids, as I got a call in 2003 from emergency management, hey, we need something because the kids, they're 20-some deep in the back of a squad bay watching TV because the husbands or the spouses are deployed. What can you help us with? And so we went to work to help to meet that need. And I think that's important because that's something that a lot of people don't recognize in military communities. How many families are dual military, number one. And number two, the spouses of those military are also first responders in many different ways. And it is devastating. We actually sounded the alarm of childcare crisis in 2010, and I met with department head leaders in Raleigh because at that time, Camp Lejeune started talking about that they had this new lab school. It was a partnership with the virtual lab school with Ohio State and the Department of Defense and the Department of Agriculture. And would there be a way, especially for military spouses that are only in our community 2 to 3 years, as you've mentioned, how could we help them have a career track? Because opening a family childcare home got more and more difficult because water and sewer is an asset. Takes a lot of water and sewer when you open a family home business. And in fact, when I started in 99 within the Smart Start Network, we had 178 family childcare homes. Today we have 17. And the population of Onslow County still grows, right? So when you think about the dynamics of the alarm bells that we were trying to sound, it's never about eroding the education that's needed in classrooms, but it's also recognizing as the youngest county in North Carolina with an average age of 27, and that has risen from 23. We have to also be able to address our workforce, right? We have to be able to give them a pathway in the time that they're with us, knowing that they will circle back. We were during that time in that administration able to get where military families, when Morat 4 was transitioning to NC pre-K, that active duty families would be eligible. So we have served in roles like that in our community and continue to. I will say that Hurricane Florence forever changed us. And I will say that the decline of childcare, especially our churches, at one time, we had double the number of GS 110s in our community. And churches really saw it as a mission of theirs to be able to provide, and you had asked about churches. The churches are not using it in the same way. One, it's a liability. Two, it's very expensive. And as the population has continued to grow, funding vehicles have continued to decrease. Anyone who knows our organization knows that we have tried to live into Governor Hunt's original mission, which is to leverage the private-public partnership. And we've been very successful at that. It's very hard to convince people that childcare from a philanthropic standpoint is something that needs to be invested in. We're all open. But the military, given the pace of deployments that happen, we have to pivot as much as they pivot, not just as an employer and being able to, be able to offer and to keep our employees, because it's a constant retention issue just to provide those services. But we hear the cry, and it is an ecosystem.
So what I loved about your remarks is you really talked about, you leaned into the effect of the military lifestyle and how it affects your system and your center, both through the students themselves and the kiddos experiencing deployments at home, and also I assume some of your staff. Can you tell me a little bit more about maybe what One Place is doing to recognize those needs and support families through deployments and training?
Sure. So we are a nonprofit that administers support. So I think that's probably Stacy with the New River YMCA. And what I will say though is one of the things that One Place has done, and as a CEO, I'm a founder of this organization that could bring additional resources into the community.
John, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
Stacy.
Yeah.
Can
That's all right.
you
We like to be
repeat some of
interchangeable.
that? Yeah, don't we?
Well,
I'm not
you
as
know,
eloquent as Dawn.
Yeah, so military cultural competence, really understanding the lives of these families. And I think CEOs have a role in that, right? Helping train and equip. And I do think that's a response. I think the fact that you're acknowledging the military lifestyle has unique demands on staff and also on the kids in your centers. How do you navigate those kind of on a day-to-day basis?
We operate childcare completely differently in a whole bunch of different realms. So our biggest provider of before and after care and childcare in our community at our Y is our before and after care programs. We serve almost 900 kids just in those programs on a daily basis at just 17 of the elementary schools in Onslow County. Of that 900, over 50% of them are military affiliated. Some of these military affiliations are active duty, some are retired military, some are disabled veterans families. And it brings a different uniqueness than just a Monday through Friday from 7 to 5 platform that our licensed childcare center does. We have before care sites that open at 6 o'clock in the morning. Opening that early allows military to be able to beat the base traffic and get to work, but it also means that by 6:15 in the morning, we have almost 60 children dropped off to us within 15 minutes of opening. The partnership with Onslow County Schools has allowed us to stay directly in the communities of these students and families. So while we're talking about base and the CDCs are very full, yes, if you have the opportunity to drive from where you live in Sneads Ferry in our county all the way to Camp Lejeune, that's a 45-minute drive with traffic before your child even gets to where they need to go. And that's not how any 8-year-old wants to start their day. They want to be able to get where they need to very quickly, and then be able to spend the morning with friends, with counselors that enjoy them every morning. For staffing, it's very hard. We employ a lot of teenagers in our after-school programs, which has helped. A lot of these are military teens that will leave in a few years. We engage those military teens in some of our other service corps programs, our youth and government programs, and we are hoping to give them some life skills and some work skills that when they leave us, they can find another YMCA, another city Parks and Rec, another program when they go to college that will allow them to continue their workforce experience. But this also means that every 2 to 3 years, we have significant turnover. And when you are trying to staff a site, our largest before care site has 75 children enrolled. So by 6:15 in the morning, you need no less than 5 counselors there. And that is almost impossible to do. And I say that because I have been working that site almost religiously this entire school year. And then going to my other portion of what I do in more traditional childcare. We also offer a half-day program for preschool that serves just as many as our traditional licensed childcare center, if not more. This allows a lot of families, especially military spouses, to at least be able to work part-time, to finish their school, to volunteer so that they still have those volunteer opportunities to be able to put on a resume when they leave us. Half-day childcare comes with its own unique option, restrictions though, because we can only have them there for 4 hours with us. So for a family that may just need that additional hour, to get to and from work, to finish up the last of what they need to do or pick another child up from school, we're still working on trying to figure that one out, if I'm being very honest. But that we're working on it, so.
Thanks so much. 4 a.m. PT, everybody's gotta get there, right? Do we have Sarah? Is she able to come off
she can
mute?
hear us, but I don't think she can come off mute.
Sarah, are you able to comment your responses? She can hear us. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask you a question. And I'm gonna let the other panelists answer first, and then you can type out your response. Does that work? I think that'll work. All right, Sarah. Sarah's calling in from a childcare center at Camp Lejeune, New River. Can you help us understand the resources that you have access to as a Marine Corps base that others may not have, and vice versa? And while you're at it, while you're typing, could you touch on the role on-base childcare has in the community's childcare ecosystem? And while she's responding, if you guys want to tackle any part of that question.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we talked about in our prep call is that it's important to recognize that in the community, a teacher assistant in childcare will start between $9 and $11 an hour. And Roderick, you can say, because you were just at McEast and you said the average childcare starting salary was $19 an hour, and that includes a fully subsidized childcare slot. So that is a huge difference for the 700 teachers, and then they have about 100 more. And this is something that Sarah was also talking about during this time, but you were there and observed it.
Yeah, on my trip to McEast, I would say that their starting salary on the installation is $19.20 an hour, with an increase every time that they get some type of certification. So that's an incentive for that actual provider to stay on the installation. Also, in an incentive package, they offer the first child free, and then 20% off, 25% off for every additional child. So that is astronomical with what they're doing in their actual community. They're really working hard to make sure that our service members are taken care of when it comes to childcare, and trying to get after the workforce issue as well. Also with the workforce issue, I will take until they could get her on. There's a House Bill 389 that's out there right now, which is the Childcare Workforce Pilot Program. And the Childcare Workforce Pilot Program will allow for community college system to offer childcare academies for childcare aspiring workers to be in that field at no charge. And once they graduate, if they go to a certified childcare facility, they'll receive a stipend after the first year of working there. So there are ways out there that we are trying to get after it as a department. We're trying to champion certain things that would help our military community, as well as House Bill 412. 412 allows for the installation to go out and certify home care. She's ready.
Oh, you keep going. It's
Okay.
alright, I'm taking
And
this.
412 will allow our military installations to go out and certify in-home childcare without having to go through the state. The process was so cumbersome that a lot of people didn't want to do it because it took so much time. So now with House Bill 412, because the federal standards are just a tad bit stringent than North Carolina's standards, then they will allow for those child care providers to be certified by the actual installation. For child care for military personnel only though. It wouldn't be for the actual population, but for child care.
So for those of you who can't see, thank you so much, Sarah, for writing in. We've got your comments up here now. Sarah, they're looking at a system that's got over 1,500 students enrolled, over 800, they've got 842 staff, 152 classrooms across 8 CDCs, and total SAC rep of 4. She's talking here about demand, because of demand, and also I'm assuming because of the military priority system, they're primarily serving single and dual military. So in the military, in addition to having the subsidy stipend system being according to household income, you also have a priority system to get into the on-installation care in particular as well. And that priority system really prioritizes military readiness. So you've got your dual military and your single soldiers up top, and it kind of cascades down from there. So it looks like they're primarily serving single and dual active. And the highest demand, as I'm assuming it is in Mitch for the state, is for infant care. They do have high, because again, the question was what access do they have? What do they have on site that's a little bit different? So they've got a higher starting pay, $19 an hour. That's with no experience provided. 100% discount on childcare fees with a 25% sibling discount. 20% of employees are using this discount are military spouses. They've got a virtual lab school training through Ohio State that was referenced earlier. And you can earn college credits towards a degree. Transferability from installation to installation. This is huge, by the way. This just came through a couple of years ago where the military system said, oh, wait, if you're working in a childcare facility on base A and you move every couple of years, wouldn't it be great if we could just slide you into an opening staff slot there and help address our labor shortage? So that's been huge. They've got training and curriculum specialists at every center working with employees, providing observation and feedback. TA, I'm assuming that means teaching assistants. Larger centers have up to 3 TCSs providing curriculum support, and health resources to maintain health card needs and vaccination needs, and that's a partnership with NMCCL. So as you can see, there are, as Ms. Frago was talking about earlier, just enormous benefits to the military childcare system and lots that can be learned there.
Question, the staffing, the number of staff per students, I'm missing something. Could you go back down? 800 something staff or 1,600?
It's a very
Is it-
low, they're NACE accredited, which you can speak to, Susan,
That's
better than I
just-
can. Yeah, it is a very, it's government subsidized, it's on the supply and the demand side, but yes, it is a very small
They
ratio.
offer 24-hour service.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh, we brought her to life.
It's non-direct.
Okay, so these are direct care and non-direct care staff. So the non-direct care staff would be the directors. Typically, we have 2 assistant directors. You have community health nurses. You have training, curriculum specialists. You have dedicated custodians, food service workers, office automation clerks. So we do have a fair amount of non-direct care staff also. So that's why that number looks disproportionate.
And how we tried to morph in the community, and we went to childcare providers and said, okay, what's gonna make the difference? And they said, give us what the base has in terms of the amount of consultants. And so when we experienced a funding decline and we had to make shifts, they're like, give us the people that can work side by side with our teachers. And that was after the 11-12 session. Because the community childcare recognizes they recognizes that if we need to be the best, especially at a time when we know child mental health issues continue to escalate. And one place also is the Child Advocacy Center for our community. And so we're in this child mental health space, and in order to actively be able to serve children that have constant moves, constant adjustments, exposure to our military members that have been exposed in theater to different things that a civilian person has, you must have the child mental health alongside. The base does, and we're glad of that. We're so fortunate to that. But 70% of our military live off post or out off base, depending on which base you're talking to. And so we have to continue to try and adjust that capacity and the specialists to staff it.
And one of the other issues we discussed during our prep call was that the military actually has a higher number of EF&P exceptional families, children with special needs, than the civilian population for a number of reasons. So they have a disproportionate need as well. And of course, any special needs childcare is difficult to come by, but it's particularly important for military families. Okay, so earlier we heard that there's some differences, some nuanced differences from service branch to service branch. I was going to ask the whole panel if you've experienced any of these and just kind of can tease out for those in the crowd an example or two of how each service delivers their childcare differently or approaches it differently based on your experience.
Sarah might be the best one to.
Yeah.
She can talk.
Well, her microphone's not working again. Sarah, you there? You want to type out an answer, we'll get you in a sec.
If I'm the best qualified to answer that, what I would say is when we were mapping what was needed in the community, especially around the time of working with Lejeune and New River Centers specifically, to see whether or not they should become licensed, right? Looking at how do we expand capacity. And I will say the biggest difference is they have more mixed age classrooms within the Marine Corps centers, and I assume that that's the same where you can have NACCE accredited standards. They're all NACCE accredited, I believe, and it's different. It doesn't match or align specifically to North Carolina standards, and I would think that's, there's similarities, but there are some nuanced differences. Probably not the best to speak to it. I'm looking at Susan or.
I could give a couple examples of how they're different. So first of all, you mentioned children who have disabilities, and they're actually, I didn't talk about this, but there is a whole separate program called Exceptional Family Member Program that we also administer for the military for military families who have children who have disabilities. And it's a respite care, it's a whole nother program, but I won't get into that for today. I'll just say a couple of the differences. So for example, it's little things like one service branch may say, I'm not going to approve you unless I know there isn't a slot for you on installation, where another service branch will say, I'm approving you. Another service branch, for example, has a cap on how much money they're willing to spend overall. And so they'll start a wait list if families if they don't think they've appropriated any more money. Other service branches just serve families no matter what. Another service branch will say, if in North Carolina, we look on the DCDEE website and it says that the program's licensed, we're taking that as the gospel. And another service branch, they literally make the provider upload a copy of their license. So it can be both process things and things that are impacted for the family. It's paperwork and also some policy decisions.
As a licensed childcare center in town that does accept Childcare Aware America, we had to prove to them that our center was just as high quality as the centers on base. So it wasn't just our license that we needed to turn in, it was all of the paperwork that went along with it, information about our staffing and how we got to be such a high quality. If it did not match what they believed was the same high quality that was on base, we wouldn't have been able to get approved. Thankfully we were. Because I think in our center, we have 11 families in the Marine Corps that use childcare aware.
And this is also a center that is early Head Start as well.
Yes.
We're an early Head Start grantee with One Place. They're one of our childcare partnerships.
All right, so staying along the kind of differences with where things are similar, we've talked a lot about active and currently serving military families, also include National Guard and Reserve. Rod, and anybody else who can weigh in here, can you provide some color on childcare needs and resources among National Guard members and their families?
Yes, our National Guard brothers and sisters have a unique challenge because most of them are located in rural areas. So in the rural areas, to be in MCCYN or to qualify for any subsidy that the government allows, they don't meet the star, which Ms. Perry went over, which they had 3 stars or better, or they don't have it at all. So only about 10 to 15% of our National Guard qualify for subsidies out in the rural areas and the areas that they're located. So that's a challenge all in itself. And then in the western area of the state, when it comes to our National Guard and Reserves, they also find a challenge because childcare is almost non-existent in those areas. So they're really finding it hard to find quality childcare. So most of them, by virtue, are being taken care of by family members, which most of children that we find are taken care of by our family members. I will tell you that the Army has implemented a pilot program where they will pay for one person in your family or your choosing to be moved to where you are to help with childcare situations. And so they're getting real creative right now to try to help with the service member and the childcare issue. But with our National Guard, it's really scarce when it comes to childcare because, you know, there's certain things that are required of them. And so most of them don't.
Can you share a little bit about what's different about the National Guard mission and what their unique needs are?
Well, the National Guard mission or a National Guard soldier is I say soldier because I'm an old Army Sergeant Major, so please forgive me if I'm offending anyone. We call them part-time soldiers. They come in 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends a year. And then most of the time when they come in on drill weekends, what they call the drill weekend, they would need some type of child care. I do know that speaking with the air refueler out at Seymour Johnson, which is a reserve component, they do allow certain respite times for the service member when they do come out on the installation. The challenges are they work full time as a parent, and then on the weekend or that chosen weekend, they have to go out and serve. And that puts that weekend where they probably would be able to watch their child and not have to pay for childcare. Now they have to find childcare. So there are really unique challenges within the National Guard service member.
Yeah, and during our last task force meeting, we talked about the effect of Hurricane Helene in depth. I think it's worth noting that the National Guard is they're the ones who respond to natural disasters. And so if you don't have that emergency childcare option, it can be a real detriment to the response.
Especially if you dual National Guard.
Yeah, and what I will say is we have a lot of instances when there's a large deployment or deployment tempo where the private childcare provider will actually take guardianship or custody of the child while both are deployed or one is. And so when you talk about kith and kinship care, our early ed community really has stepped up in order to provide stability for a lot of military families.
Thank you for mentioning that, because that is exactly what I was alluding to when I mentioned you have to have a family care plan in place. And North Carolina is home to many expeditionary units. When you hear about the 82nd Airborne Division, when you hear about your special operations community, they're the ones who go like that. They don't necessarily have the same supports. And so kudos to your crew for taking that. A final question to the group, and then we'll pivot to Q&A. If you had one piece of advice for childcare providers, ECE organizations, or communities to help them better serve military families, what would it be? Rod, we can start with you.
My one piece of advice will have flexible hours, especially when we deal with the military community. We go to work early and we get off oftentimes later than usual. So we find that in my community, which I am a part of the Seymour Johnson Air Force Base community, we find that the child care providers who do well are those who have flexible hours and will cater to the hours of the military. That's my one piece of advice.
That's a great piece of advice. I'm gonna go with really strong partnerships. We can't do it by ourselves, so trying to do it by ourselves, it's not gonna happen. So if we can't get the other entities in our community on board to help support these families and to help support these kids, it's just gonna be stagnant and not go anywhere.
I would say to honor that it is different. You know, as Susan mentioned, there are 100 counties. The military counties, especially given the transient nature in and out, our school system will tell you that 25% of the kids that start the year aren't the ones that end the year, and the ones that end aren't the ones that started. And it is a dynamic and constantly evolving nature. And what I will say is we need connection and flexibility, because I'm known for saying it takes government, it takes philanthropy, it takes business, and it takes advocacy, and is why groups like this meeting around the table to think about things that that can be done through connection and leverage are important.
Before we pivot to Q&A, I want to make sure I read in Sarah's. She says all of their facilities are NIAC accredited. They're the only service branch that has CYP community nurses. We are able to accommodate a level of children with special needs. We also have the behavior specialists who work with families, classrooms, and staff to best accommodate challenges with behavior. So again, when we're looking at lessons, the military is doing a lot right. All right. Questions? Yes, sir.
You just said a statistic, 25% that start aren't there at the end. So that means their parents are moving, people are moving. Does the military not take that into account, moving families, or does it just mission? Not, I would think that they would. They don't even look at that.
Rod might be the one to best answer that.
I would say now the military are trying to take into that in account now because they have 2 transition cycles. So they'll transition mainly in the summertime when it's a school break, and then they'll try to transition again and around the holiday season. So they're trying to take that into account as far as the family is concerned.
That's a current statistic, the 25%?
That's been within the past 3 years. Yeah.
Apparently you're doing real well. I mean, you've got a lot of, how many kids did you say you're dealing with?
We serve about 1,000 just in K through 12 daily.
And so financially, you're very sound and doing well?
You would like to think that, yes. You would like to think that.
And I was just thinking, is it because you're getting more money because a lot of our military, you said 50%, I think?
Yes, but our before and after care programs are not licensed programs. So we don't receive any subsidy, and we gave out $113,000 last year just in financial assistance for those programs. So our rates are pretty low compared to what a child care center actually charges. We also keep our before and after care rates separate. There are some families that only need it before care. You get to drop off early. You're able to get your child from the bus because the bus system takes forever for these kids to get home. So you're there getting them off the bus stop at 4:30 in the afternoon. You only need something before. If you're able to start work just a little bit later, you may only need aftercare. So our families have a few different models that they can choose from. They can drop off early, they can pick up late, they can utilize both if they need to. We also offer care on early release days, teacher work days, holiday camps, along with summer camp. Our summer camp numbers are a little bit lower, but we still serve right around 500 in the K through 12 range throughout our county. The other thing we have going for us is we do stay throughout our county. We're not at our Y. A lot of Ys run aftercare programs in their building and they bus the kids to them. We don't do that. We go to the schools, our staff go to the schools, our supplies go to the schools. We do partner with the Armed Services YMCA for some additional funding. So there is a military discount given to them strictly through that. In the climate that we're in right now with a government shutdown, that armed services funding can potentially cover program fees if military families are not getting paid on the 15th and aren't able to pay their childcare.
So, and I won't get into the numbers too much, but what percentage of your funding is from the military?
What percentage of our funding?
Funding for any services you provide or anything?
Low. Our armed services funding is less than $10,000 a year. But we also partner with the Southeast YMCA to feed all of the kids and our after-school programs. And we do receive in that $10,000 funding to feed military families because that's a very quiet food insecurity that a lot of military families have. So our funding for the military goes to more than just our before and after care or our child care programs, but it goes for the entire family.
What is interesting to serve this many, I'll speak as a board member for this, is that the ecosystem of childcare, when you expand Boys and Girls Home slots and Boys and Girls Club slots and YMCA slots for before and after school care, when you look at the economics on private childcare existing, in order for them to provide those infant toddler slots, they have to have a certain number of preschool and K-12 slots in order to balance their budget. Yeah. And so it's great for families, and what I would say is our board is under consideration for the YMCA, whether or not as a YMCA will continue 0 to 2 childcare because of the expense of it. Because we actually do provide the YMCA staff with good benefits, and the cost of it is not balancing out.
No, keeping up with, it's wonderful that BASE can offer this, but when you live in a community that BASE employs that many, especially in their CDC, to be a nonprofit or be a childcare that is trying to keep up with that, it's close to impossible. So we can hire wonderful staff and give great benefits and have wonderful support. But when you can go somewhere else down the road and get very similar, and also make $4 or $5 more an hour, it's very hard for us to keep staff. And to know that we do offer, like Dawn said, our childcare centers do offer a higher hourly rate than most in our county. We offer benefits, we offer a significant amount of PTO, we offer retirement. To be able to give the employee that and their families that comes at such a high cost to us that we don't know if it's going to be operational yet. And that's even with having a significantly great before and after and summer camp programs to help balance that out. It is still a struggle to try to meet all of the needs that not just the families need, but that the staff need, and that what we need is the why.
I think that's really important what they're saying right now, because they're talking about infant and toddler care and how unsustainable it is. So it's wonderful that North Carolina has the NC pre-K program, but same with our $2,000 rate cap. The truth is, where we run into problems with the $2,000 rate cap across the country is for infants, because baby care is the most expensive care to deliver. And paid parental leave is great, but that's not going to take you through much more than a couple months of their lives. And so then you're into, what do you do, particularly when you have active duty military, dual military families who have to have a child care that's an infant toddler care. It's so hard to make work financially with the rates that we have.
Any other questions?
Question. Have you seen any impact yet? It might still be early with 412, like for example, an increase of family childcare homes off the base, or a decrease of maybe military spouses to open childcare if you're leaving the workforce?
I don't know, and of course, you've been in Onslow County, so right now, there would have to be some significant zoning. When I mentioned to begin with, the water and sewer assets, right? So in order, even though development continues to be very robust in our county, you would have to do some significant rezoning in order to allow, because currently like the mid-2000s where we saw the decrease is because of development and developers. And there was a requirement of a higher grade septic system. And that's about the level of expertise I have on that. But it's a zoning issue and water and sewer. And then if you're only there for 3 years, is it really worth putting in a higher grade septic system? Probably not. So I think, you know, there's, people would just say, well, I'll just care for them. I don't need to do all that.
I will say in Wayne County though, there's a slight uptick in home child care. Because taking out of being able to license at the state level, just having that one license has made it a little bit easier. So it has a slight uptick.
I'd like to add to that Southwestern Child Development, we just completed our round of Family Child Care Innovation grants, which was grants for capacity building, both on new licensed family child care and also expansion under the revised rules. We had 367 interest inquiries. And then we actually had over 100 that got across the finish line. We had money for 24. So the interest is there. We're now trying to go back to those people that didn't get across the finish line and say, what were the barriers? What could we have done differently? Again, we hear zoning being a really big issue. It's inconsistent across the state. You have to know right there in your specific area what the rules are. And so sometimes they get into the process and they just feel so overwhelmed. And it's not necessarily overwhelmed from perspective of DCDEE, but it's all those other steps in their local communities that really are the barriers. And hopefully we will have the information. Hopefully we will get some people that didn't get across the finish line to respond. And then we'll see, because we've been tracking that all across the state. All of these interest inquiries from, again, areas of the state, just to see if we can see patterns too of what's going on.
Right. Where Sarah was saying earlier, and about how primarily due to need, most of the children who were serviced at the center were from dual enlisted or single parent households. I'm sorry, when you made that comment at the very beginning, Jenny, about a quarter of our enlisted military being in food insecure households, that that's sitting with me through this entire thing. And I'm curious, is that who's signing up for it, or is there a significant wait list, or are there like a number of families that have been turned away? I would just love to know in terms of how many families aren't able to access that are hoping to.
I mean, I have my answer, but if anybody on the panel wants to take it first. All right, so the DoD, the Department of War, has a priority system, right? So if you are dual military or you are a single service member, the military's readiness is absolutely contingent on your ability to have your kids in a childcare system. So you will take precedent over everybody else. And so what she is essentially saying is that the demand is there for that population, that they are filling those needs. Now, to your broader point though, yes, that means there is absolutely a population, probably mostly military spouses who want to go back to work or would like to work part-time. And by the way, DOW, sorry, it's hard now, civilians, they drop to the bottom of the list in the priority list, so that military are above them now. So you are losing the people who no longer have access to those slots when dual military or single service members take them are your Defense Department, War Department civilians, and military families who have another spouse in the workforce. So they're the ones moving into childcare into my military childcare in your neighborhood. I've always called it childcare where it was just easier to say. Programs into the civilian community. Somebody mentioned earlier, 70% of military families live off installation. And when you are, really trying to make that work, childcare, absolutely, the cost of childcare is cutting into your ability to buy food for your family. As I mentioned again, military spouses are unemployed at greater rates than anybody else in the country, 20% or greater. again, because you're moving every 2 years. And by the way, since you're moving every 2 years, you can't grow within a company. So you're moving laterally in your career. You're not progressing and getting an income increase over time because you're underemployed. So military families really, childcare is the root cause of so many of our broader issues. And so we're really grateful when we see these great partnerships like yours, where you're really saying, oh, we also help with SNAP. We also provide food. I'm like, fantastic. That's great. Those are the kinds of really full community takes a village kind of models that I've heard many people in this task force and on multiple panels talk about that childcare centers play. And it's the same thing for military families. But we don't know those social networks when we move into your community. So when we move into a community and our childcare center is doing that for us, it's giving us a whole system of support that we would have otherwise had to find on our own. So just huge hat tip for doing that.
And I will add that it is most of our junior enlisted soldiers or junior soldiers who have to go on the economy to try to find childcare, because the wait list is the wait list. And when you get to an installation, some of those families who are seeing the food insecurities are also having to navigate trying to find childcare off the installation. And more time often than not.
All right, let's give this group a big round of applause. So we're a little behind schedule, so let's take a 5-minute break and then we're gonna have work groups and that's it.
Nice to meet you. I'm glad it was good. I was like, I don't think I can do it.
Down in Fayetteville, the same place.
I think that's exciting.
You do.
Well, you know what, if we can increase that, save the dates super early, because my time.
Thank you, I'm gonna head out.
We already have the
Head out.
Okay.
Send it to me, all right?
I know, I guess we'll have a lot of time emailing.
Military childcare. Yes, they do. Yes, I know they're working on it. You will love.
I know, it
Good. Are y'all coming, do you wanna come to the public policy thing again? I need a team. No, you should go talk to DC. We're in CAYC. February.
Yes, exactly. Very tough. You should get some calls, it's like having.
If you got any staff that wanna,
Oh, I am so sympathetic.
She's Scrum Master and then like.
so right.
That's why you get in the early
It's the middleman.
Yeah, I know.
We could do like an advocacy meeting.
Okay, so get out of my daughter's head. I'm just having a conversation with her, I believe. Well, Susan. But I just thought I'd come over and just say, it's like, well, I'm just thinking about my daughter. I'm just thinking about my daughter who's pregnant in Las Vegas with no support. So I'm hoping in Nevada they'll have some childcare that can benefit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm having it for here and I'm just working from my I know, it's and I respect so. Like, I think we're closer to that, certainly. They say they have a lottery system, but I also feel like they give it grace. And give grace to yourself. Because it is actually.
I just wanted to say hi.
Katie.
Yeah.
Great to meet you. Yeah. You did such a great job.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do all this, and she was like, well, next time you come to DC, I'll take you up to Greece, we'll
No,
talk
she
all
really
about
was,
it.
it's funny because we saw Liz at the, New America thing. Yeah, and Liz, I was with Liz, and we were talking about this.
We started.
So, yeah, anytime. It's great talking to you.
I know, Sam, I had to ask someone, I was
face,
like,
but it's not the same.
It's not the same as Cynthia.
Where is it?
I was like, okay.
Like, it's not just one option.
Yeah, and thank you, it was just really.
And they always tell stories.
True story, and not like halfway right.
Yeah.
You know, and also make it like.
Yeah.
Yes. It's great to meet you. Yeah.
Are you headed out?
I have another meeting now. I
have one right after this one. I'm so glad you are here.
I gotta get her to come. I said, come work out of my office one day, just so I can look at your face and like, tell me what you learned. Just tell me. I know. And my Ariel.
I know.
Caveat of like, because I know y'all are doing real work like that, and feel like you know, find out exactly the funding and how that will look. I know Neil and I want to play with people to ask about.
She used to be the
I mean, I was.
I think we've been in meetings together, but she was a staff person. And she was a family liaison. She was staff for the family advisory.
No, you know what it is? It's you got all the trees.
I think we've been